Hey guys, in honor of the fact that the Dracula TV series has just aired and also the fact that Halloween is just around the corner, I decided I'm going to review Bram Stoker's Dracula and Syrie James' Dracula, My Love. Before I get started, the Dracula portion of this review isn't going to be too long. The major focus is going to be on Dracula, My Love. So I'm just going to go right into Dracula. Bram Stoker's Dracula is about one of the first original vampires, Dracula himself. Dracula wants to move away from his castle in Transylvania, and helping him is his solicitor, Jonathan Harker. But unknown to poor Jonathan Harker is the fact that Dracula is not who he seems. And Harker quickly discovers the horrors that lie within Castle Dracula. Told through a series of letters, journals, and diaries, Dracula is a tale about a group of protagonists who must unite to defeat this great evil. This is actually my third time rereading Dracula, and I decided to do so because the television series is airing, which stars Jonathan Rhys-Meyers as Dracula. And I'm glad that I decided to reread this because there were quite a lot of details that I had forgotten, and I just wanted to kind of know all of this going into the television series, just in case the television series puts in some of these elements. When it comes to the horror genre, I think Dracula is one of my top favorites. I seriously just don't read too many scary books. Dracula is what I'd call conventional horror, just subtle scares, and it's very psychological. Not horror like what modern day horror is, like blood and gore and cheap thrills. And the great thing about Dracula is that it's not just a horror novel, it's also a commentary on Victorian life. Things like typical Victorian conventions and the role of women in that society, and the idea of sexual awakening, and even colonialism are all presented throughout Dracula in some form or manner. Dracula has such a really great, easy pace to read. There are a few occasions that are kind of dull and slow, but overall I think Dracula is a very easy read when it comes to classic literature. And what Bram Stoker does so good is kind of build up to these intense moments so perfectly that when it gets to those moments, you really are just so intense and you're ready, and it's shocking. Jonathan Harker's entrance into the novel is just one of the best entrances in any novel. I can imagine back when this book was first published, I can just see the Victorian readers being kind of in shock and awe about this opening because they have no idea what's to come. They have no idea that this is a vampire book. At least I don't think they had any idea this was a vampire book at the time. Whereas now in our modern society, everyone knows who Dracula is, and that Bram Stoker wrote the book. We know exactly what the story is about in some way. So a modern reader instantly knows this is a vampire book. The story instantly goes from Jonathan Harker to Mina and her friend Lucy, and we see their relationship, and we see the whole ordeal that Lucy goes through, and her relationship with all the other men in the novel. The parts with Lucy are some of the most intense moments of the story. You have absolutely no idea what's going to happen, and you really pray for the girl. The novel then quickly moves into the hunt to destroy Dracula, which all of that is very intense and quick, and you get to move away from England off into Transylvania. I think the only problem that I've ever had with this novel on each of my rereads is how quickly the ending is wrapped up. It just kind of moves it, the action, it builds up, and then all of a sudden it just stops and it's leveled out, and you're like, that's it? Overall, I would probably put Dracula within my top 10 favorite classics. Basically, what I love about this novel, just as you can tell from my review, I love the pacing and the characters and the plot, and that just all wraps up together and makes Dracula so good. So now, moving into Syrie James' Dracula, My Love, which obviously is a retelling of Dracula, but it is told through the eyes of Mina Harker. While her fiancé Jonathan is away on a business trip, Mina decides to go visit her best friend Lucy Westenra. It's here where Mina first encounters a very mysterious man. This mysterious man awakens something new within Mina, and she's suddenly forced to choose. Does she choose this new man who has awakened something new in her? Or does she choose her fiancé who she's been childhood friends with and who she loves very deeply? But when strange occurrences begin to happen, Mina, along with her fiancé and their friends, discover that a man who goes by the name of Dracula is preying on unsuspecting people. It's then that Mina, you guessed it, realizes that Dracula is none other than the mysterious man she's been flirting with. Is Dracula really the monster that everyone says he is, or is there something deeper lying within? I actually bought this book quite a long time ago, but I kind of was never really in the mood to read it. So then when it was announced that the television series was going to be starting, I decided to, like I said, reread Dracula and then go ahead and read this. That way I could kind of get the whole scope of it all. I think you could easily go into this book without ever having read Dracula. But I think if you read Dracula before this, I think you will just get a better understanding of what's going on, and you'll be able to kind of pinpoint out all the little details that you recognize from Stoker's original. The first thing that I quickly noted about Syrie James' retelling is that you have to look at Mina as a sort of unreliable narrator in Stoker's version. Remember, in Stoker's version, basically we get events told by Mina through her letters and her journals. But in Syrie James's version, like I said, it's told entirely in first person. And so when she is writing in her diary or writing in letters, Mina is purposely leaving things out. And she leaves certain things out, especially her flirting with this mysterious new man who eventually becomes Dracula. She leaves all this stuff out because of her flirting. And she doesn't want Jonathan or even Lucy to pick up her diary and read about what she's doing. So we, as readers, know entirely what's going on. I really think Syrie James's retelling was just so brilliant. I found it very smart and creative. In the back of my edition, I have a reader's guide where Syrie James is being interviewed, and basically Syrie James said the whole idea for this book came about after she herself reread Dracula, and she realized that Bram Stoker left a lot of unanswered questions. Some of those questions, I'll just read this little snippet really quick. Who is Dracula? How did he acquire his uncanny powers? Who are the 3 vampire women at his castle, and what are they doing there? Why does Dracula choose Whitby as his port of entry into England if Purfleet is his intended destination? Why doesn't Lucy's body crumble to dust when she is slain? And why does Mina become Dracula's prey? So yeah, Syrie James has a ton of questions, and honestly, after I had finished rereading Dracula, I realized those were some exact questions that I myself had. And basically, all of these unanswered questions that any reader has ever had, Syrie James answers them all. And it's all very creative and interesting, and it all makes perfect sense once you think about it. Another interesting thing that I think Syrie James does with her retelling is to flip the protagonists and the villains. In Bram Stoker's original, the protagonists are Jonathan Harker, Van Helsing, Dr. Seward, Arthur, and Morris. And then, of course, in Stoker's original, Dracula is the villain. So what Syrie James does so wonderfully is switch all of those notions that you've ever had about Stoker's Dracula. Jonathan Harker, Van Helsing, Dr. Seward, Arthur, and Morris, they are all still protagonists in some way, but once you really get to know Dracula and you begin to love his relationship with Mina, you kind of realize that Jonathan and Van Helsing and the rest of them are actually all kind of the antagonists. I wouldn't call them villains because they're not really villainous, they all just think they're doing the right thing in protecting Lucy and Mina, but they are still very much antagonists in Syrie James's eyes. In Syrie James's retelling, we see that Mina is developing these very real feelings for Dracula. And we come to realize that Dracula is a very misunderstood figure, and that everyone paints him in a very bad light. But of course, once again, Mina, since she is flirting with another man, can't tell the 5 other men about Dracula and that they're misunderstanding him, because then Jonathan will find out, and she doesn't want to hurt and betray Jonathan. Mina as a character was very well done. She had a very distinct voice that I could hear perfectly in my head. She was also very likable and relatable, and just overall a very strong heroine. Mina in this novel is constantly struggling with Victorian values. She's constantly sexually frustrated, but she knows she can't be off dancing with another man while her fiancé is away. Mina also wants to be an ideal wife for Jonathan, but she also has her own ambitions that rely on her not staying at home all the time. Mina also wants to retain this certain amount of purity of being and just very clean, but that's really a struggle for her also when she starts having these, I guess, sexual dreams about Dracula and imagines him biting into her neck and drawing blood. I really enjoyed all these varying contrasts of Mina, because you have the Mina who does want to be very ideal and pure and be that perfect Victorian woman. But then you also have the Mina who wants to be very modern and not constricted by these Victorian values. And I really appreciated what Syrie James did with these contrasting Minas, because it made Mina not a perfect character. It made her have flaws and someone that you could relate to. In other words, she wasn't a Mary Sue. Whereas I think in Bram Stoker's story, I think Mina comes across as very Mary Sue-ish, and everyone loves her and she has no flaws. And whenever something bad happens to her, all the men have to make these apologies and say, it's not you, Mina, it's Dracula doing all these terrible things to you. And sometimes in Stoker's original tale, you kind of just Mina would just get annoying because she was so perfect and wonderful. And another thing that Syrie James does is to make Mina heavily involved with just the overall action in the plot, and especially in regards to the very ending. Mina is with the men. She is forming the outlines of their missions. And she gets to do a little bit of fighting at the end, which was cool. Overall, if you're someone who really loved Bram Stoker's original story, I think you will find this retelling by Syrie James very, very good and just overall so brilliant and interesting, and you'll get all of your unanswered questions explained. The sexual energy that was only hinted at in Bram Stoker's story is in full force in Syrie James's retelling. You get to see Dracula as a whole different person, and you get to understand him and sympathize with him. And Mina's relationship with both Jonathan and Dracula is very fascinating, because you kind of want her to stay with both men. Even yourself as a reader, it's hard as a reader to kind of pick, do I want Mina with Jonathan or do I want Mina with Dracula? It's very conflicting even while you're reading. And Mina loves both Jonathan and Dracula for very different reasons, because of the different things that they make her feel. Jonathan provides the traditional feelings and pure love and just idealism, whereas Dracula provides a sexual awakening from Mina and a way for her to break Victorian constraints. Like I said at the beginning of this review, it's probably best to reread Bram Stoker's original story in order to fully appreciate Syrie James's retelling. I know, I'm glad that I reread it. There were just so many fine details, and I found myself, while I was reading Syrie James's retelling, just going, I remember that. I love how she brilliantly just retold that aspect of the story. And to be honest, after I reread Syrie James's book, I kind of wanted to go back and reread Dracula again with this notion of the behind the scenes of what Mina's diaries are not telling us. So that's it for my review of both Bram Stoker's Dracula and Syrie James's Dracula My Love. I really hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope you guys pick up these books at some point, or if you've already read them, let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye guys!